deal with maps. Now, I know a little bit about you. I certainly know my background, but let's take a minute, introduce our audience to ourselves. So hey everyone, I'm Kent Martin, and I'm the lead product manager for maps and spatial analysis at Tableau. I've been at Tableau for about 5 years with really the same mission the entire time, to help people see and understand their spatial data. So with that, I've been working with Sarah over the course of these years. Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Sarah Battersby. I'm on the research team at Tableau. Before I came to Tableau, I was an academic. I taught cartography classes, geographic information science classes, and spent my time as a cognitive cartographer or a psychogeographer, thinking about how people think about spatial data. I'm really excited to be at Tableau for the past 5 years because it's just so cool to be working with people, helping them see their spatial data and understand what's going on.
Hang on, Sarah. Did you just call yourself a psychogeographer?
Yeah, it's my best party line. My best party line.
That's great. So why don't we talk a little bit about sort of what's going on with Tableau, right? Can I just take a minute here, sort of run down exactly what people are doing with Tableau, starting with some of the basics. So in Tableau, one of the most important things that people want to do is visualize geographic information, right? They want to build maps. And Tableau makes it really easy to do this. And it's because we have built-in geocoding. And geocoding is this great functionality, right? It's the translation of a geographic place into actual marks or data, points, locations on a map in the right location. And geocoding is one of these things where, really just a few years ago, maybe 5, 7 years ago, right? It was really hard to even build an interactive map. You might need to know a little bit of coding. You might need to know a little bit of sort of intense technical background working with the GIS or something like that. But in Tableau, we've tried to make this really drag and drop and in the flow and build in some of those smarts. So I always like to tell people, like, maps are great, maps are amazing, and it's usually the first thing that people say when I say, like, I work on all this stuff. They're like, maps in Tableau? Man, that's like the highlight of them using the product. But they don't always use maps in their work. They might play around with it a little bit. Maybe, Sarah, you can tell us a little bit about working with spatial data, maybe dig into some of the challenges or things you're doing to help educate Tableau users.
Yeah, thanks, Kent. So, like I said in my introduction, I used to teach at a university, and one of the things that I always told my students is that the map is really only part of the story. If all you ever do, and I was saying this to cartography students, if all you ever do is make a map, you're probably missing a lot of the really important part of your data. And Tableau really jumped out at me somewhere like, I want to be there, I want to be working on this, because being able to take your map and pair it with all of the other visualizations to really dig in. I interact with the map, everything else updates. I can see the whole story. Like, this is the most awesome, powerful thing to me. And it shouldn't be hard. One of the problems that I've found for a long time is that people think that mapping is really cool, but really hard, because spatial data can be weird. There are map projection problems, there's problems getting data, figuring out where things are, how do I get it in the system, but it shouldn't be hard. And one of the things that I'm really excited that we're doing at Tableau is we're trying to make it really easy. I answer a lot of map projection questions for people, and sometimes they come from Tableau customers, and a lot of times they come from people who aren't Tableau customers, because we're working really hard to make map projections pretty seamless. You've got data, we're going to bring it in. That's one of the things that I think is really great about what we're doing, Ken.
Yeah, Sarah, I want to know a little bit more about your contributions to the community, working with like the forums and these questions. And let's just take one step back too. You're diving right into projection and like some of the harder problems when you're wrangling spatial data. But what about just that little barrier, right? You're providing a lot of blog content and sort of easy to follow instructions. And some of those things are just like, well, here's how you can work with multi-layered maps and dual axis in Tableau. Well, can you talk a little bit about that initiative, you writing blog posts, where some of that inspiration comes from?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kent. So I spent a lot of time working with our Tableau community forum. And we've got this great resource where customers ask questions and people from the Tableau community go out and answer them. And one of the things I've taken on myself for the last few years is, if someone asks a question more than a couple times, or I see the same question more than a couple times, that means to me that there's probably something that people don't understand. So I like to write blog posts about this. So I've been writing for the last few years on our Tableau community forums, my own little blog.
Maybe, what are some of the topics?
Yeah, so I think the two that have been read the most, dual axis mapping, so how can I get more than one layer on the map? Jittering points, what happens when I've got a bunch of points that overlap? Let's say I've got a lot of patients and they're attached to a zip code centroid, but I want to see all 17 points, not just a stack of 17 points. How can we jitter those, move them around? Questions about working with map projections. Or lately, I've been doing a lot of writing about SQL Spatial, because we support a couple spatial databases now, thanks to Kent and his team, who probably were tired of me pestering them about it, and trying to help people understand how you can bring even more spatial capability into Tableau.
Well, that's, you bring up connecting to spatial databases, and that also, sort of triggers a memory in my mind here, which is when I first came to Tableau, you couldn't work with spatial data natively, right? So Tableau supported numbers, dates, strings, all these common types of data, but not spatial. And so, we knew to sort of get to that next level of spatial analysis, we needed to support this as a first-class sort of format. So, we've enabled the most common file formats that include spatial data, like shapefiles, Esri file geodatabases, map info tables, KML, GeoJSON, all those formats that you can find through open data portals and so forth. And then we've also added the support for spatial data from databases like SQL Server and PostGIS. Again, the whole mission there is, you can't even start to analyze your data unless you can bring it in and visualize it, right? So I'm really glad that you're building out some of that content as well through the community. Maybe you can talk a little bit too about some of your other initiatives in the community, like user groups and sort of first-hand experience with some of our customers. We're at the conference, there's 16,000 people here, but how else, and what other venues are there for people to be involved in the community, and what are some things you've done?
Well, there are a ton of ways for people to be involved in the community, Ken. I know you're really active in the community as well, so I'm going to make you answer this as well on what you're doing, because you are one of the best resources. We got really great Tableau user groups. Just a couple weeks ago, I was talking to the San Diego Tableau user group about some of the spatial functionality in the software. We've got, sometimes I work with our Zen masters, and our Zens are doing amazing things just in general with data, but some of them are just killing it with spatial data. It's hard. It's a lot of stuff.
Like, there's a ton of stuff going on, and I know when we do the user group stuff, or we engage with customers on Twitter and some of these other avenues, we certainly kind of collect and aggregate all the common types of questions we hear. So when I'm talking to people internally at Tableau and thinking up some of the plans, right? Like, okay, what are the next sets of things? What does our next year, next 3 years look like? It often comes back to, there's a pattern here, right? These industries, it could be logistics, telecom, public sector especially, a number of industries, and I could go on, right? Oil and gas, healthcare, public safety, lots of different industries are really location-centric. A lot of the problems they're trying to solve really revolve around this context of what location, where, why in that location is this happening, right? So I think thinking about that why is sort of like the next level. Mm-hmm. I know you've done some thinking about this, how to get deeper into spatial data. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you've wrangled some things in Tableau Prep, even though spatial data is not in that product.
Yeah. So some of the blog posts I've written recently, I mean, it all comes down to, what do I keep writing blog posts on? Yeah. We get a lot of questions about geocoding, for instance. I know you've forwarded me all sorts of interesting questions. Yeah. How can I take my data in Tableau Prep and automatically enrich it? Whether I've got latitude and longitude and I need to reverse geocode and get an address out of it. Whether I've got addresses and I need to turn it into latitude and longitude.
We're talking about addresses, reverse geocoding, like some of these things that aren't built in natively into Tableau, but there's ways that we have a platform that you can extend and reach out and work with other things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There are all sorts of things that you can do in Tableau to enrich your data or to work with data in new ways. So I mentioned working with Spatial SQL and being able to connect through. In Tableau Prep, we've got ability to hook into Python scripts or R scripts And those will let you to reach out and do all sorts of things, from geocoding to some spatial analytics to point and polygon operations, which you don't even need to do in prep anymore because you can do them natively in the product.
Yeah.
Really, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think has kind of come about as you're writing about some of this content, you're trying to help people solve problems, right? And that's one sort of data point, even for our team. You work from sort of the research angle, but also really involved in the community. But I can see, just how much interaction you get and how much interest is generated from the content that you've built. And it really brings it back to the team, and we can say, well, we might need to target this and make this really easy in the product, right? Make it, or sort of think about it as democratizing geospatial analysis. Instead of you having to learn how to code or integrate with this third party or an external process, we brought in a feature like intersects, which allows Spatial Join, which is this spatially aggregating, we can build a relationship without attributes, but actually using the location to define the join. Like, that was one of the examples of where we knew there was a hard problem, and we knew people wanted to solve this problem, but we didn't want them to have to go through sort of the hoops or really work through a cumbersome workflow, and we made it sort of this native, sort of easy to use thing.
Yeah, it used to be a lot of the answers to the questions that we would give were, oh, you can do this pre-processing in a GIS, or you can do this external thing. And now we're talking about how can we just do this natively in our flow of analysis. So one of the questions that I hear frequently, which I'd like to hear your take on, is what is Tableau with respect to GIS? I mean, I know you've got a lot of experience working with GIS, and you probably think about this quite a bit.
Yeah, no, this is a good question. A question I get a lot, and I think about a lot. If we talk about Tableau and modern BI tools and where we're going as a data platform and an analytics platform, it's a lot different than the roots of traditional GISs. You mentioned I have some experience. Yeah, I'm a geographer. I went to school. I got a GIS degree and diploma. I went and worked for a GIS software company for 10 years. So, I've been in that space. And, that space started a long time ago, right? Like, we're talking 60s, early 70s. But Tableau has come out of this self-service era, right? Where it's not about going to college or school for multiple years just to learn how to use a software tool, right? It's now about, no, this should be extremely easy to use and right in the flow of analysis from the get-go. Now, talking about modern BI and GIS specifically, this is really interesting. I would say, and let me tell you a story, right? So when I first started working at Tableau about 5 years ago, and being the Maps product manager, I had a lot of conversations where people would say, well, we're not trying to be a GIS, or, you could probably do some of that in Tableau, but you might need to hack your way through it, right? And, some really smart people in the community, the Zen masters, might have figured it out, but that's not for the lay person. Mm-hmm. But I started to approach the problem just from the customer, through the customer lens, right? What is the question they have? We're a data tool. If you have data, you should be coming to Tableau and you should be able to work with it. It doesn't matter if it's spatial or location, that's just data, right? Mm-hmm. And so once, I feel like that sort of philosophy, which wasn't hard to get entrenched at Tableau, we're like, yeah, we are a data company, like that's who we are. So from there, we really looked at these key types of questions that we wanted to solve, and what are sort of some of the pillars that we want to go after. And one of those was, well, we need people to work with spatial data natively, right? So spatial files and spatial databases. And one of the other ones was, we need spatial functions and spatial operations. So we talked about Spatial Join and intersects. But even this year, we've started to add a number of calculations, like make point and make line and distance, to make all of these things easier. And you can kind of grab all those things in a bucket and say, well, weren't those traditional GIS things once upon a time? But no, they should just be a part of your data tool, right? And that's sort of what we're doing, and building these building blocks, like a calculation, or the ability to work with sets and parameters in conjunction with your geography. Like, all of those bits give you all the building blocks for both spatial data exploration and some more sophisticated analysis, which just 5 years ago, if I bring it back to my original story, people would have been saying, oh, you can't do that in our product, or that's a GIS thing. And now they're like, well, hang on. Tableau actually can do quite a bit. And maybe it is kind of blurring the lines between what we once thought of as like the scope of the GIS sort of product and market and user base. And now we're just kind of broadening that and opening it up to everyone.
I mean, if I can just sing the praises of your team for a second, and I'm sure you're not going to stop me from doing that, but if I can just say, one of the things that I think is just so super powerful, it is that you've taken all these great functions, you're building them into the product, and you're making it so that people don't need to know the spatial question anymore. They just need the question.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what customers are doing, a lot of what people in the world are doing in general, is they're asking questions about data, and they don't necessarily understand the GIS that goes behind it. People aren't looking at their data and saying, okay, I've got customers, their point locations. I've got some polygons, their trade areas. I think what I need to do is make a buffer, do a point in polygon, aggregate. They're saying,
are you saying that buffer and spatial aggregation is not in the daily vernacular of people here?
I'm just saying, my mom is not going to throw that one out there.
No.
But I often hear people saying, can you just tell me how many customers I have in Washington State?
Yeah.
I can see it on the map. Can you just tell me how many are in that polygon right there? And we've made it so they don't have to think about the space. They don't have to think about what's going on behind the scenes. They don't have to think about the fact that their point data came in as latitude and longitude in a CSV file, and their polygon data came in as a projected file from the US Census. They just throw it into Tableau and say, how many customers are in that polygon right there? And they can get the answer. And this is powerful.
It is powerful. Especially, so let's talk a little bit about GIS too, right? Geographic Information Systems. These are software tools which are really about building maps, creating data, managing spatial data, and certainly understanding spatial reference systems and managing your data within those reference systems. Publishing and sharing of maps and content like that. Like that's all a part of what that is. But Tableau, a lot of what those things are already Tableau's strengths, right? Publishing and sharing through Tableau Public, and now with online, sort of growing and evolving. Like these are things that Tableau does very well, and it works for any kind of data, right? So again, when you kind of compare these, like the space of GIS and like the data space and BI space, GIS has a long way to go to kind of catch up to like the data world and how we care and think about the governance of data and so forth. One thing I want to add is we talk about a lot of this traditional sort of sets of capabilities, right? Like spatial databases support buffer and intersects, and now they're built into Tableau. But also, Tableau is looking at data in just with a broader lens. We have natural processing capabilities now with Ask Data, where again you can be conversational with your data sources and you're going to get the right result back. It might be a map, it might not be a map, but Tableau is trying to figure out what's the best way to view your data, right? And we have built in these really innovative capabilities. And then we have Explain Data, which is really a sophisticated model-backed, machine learning-backed capability in the product. And with Explain Data, again, this is like highly interactive, right? You can be in the viz, it's interactive, you don't have to worry about, turn it on and configure it. It's just there, it's just so simple, it's a button, right? And it can produce answers and descriptions and let you understand more about why that data now is what it is, right? So we're moving from sort of simple sets of questions to that more sophisticated why question. So getting back to sort of some of these common questions and where we're going, maybe you can share a little bit about where you'd like to see Tableau go, and what are some of the important things, and maybe especially from that customer perspective, that you'd like to see us build and support those types of questions being answered.
Okay, so when I think about the customers, Kent, I'm going to aim big to start with.
Yeah.
And I feel like thinking about how do we work with spatial data in new and creative ways that don't have boundaries. So I get really excited about thinking about what is the roadmap for getting spatial support in Tableau Prep? What are the new things that we can do with the Python connector, with R, with ways that we can do analytics that have no limits, that don't say, Tableau, you need to build this for me, but Tableau, can you make it possible for me to use these other tools seamlessly with Tableau? And then we think about, now how do we build the most important ones of these into Tableau?
Yeah.
As I've been working with GIS for probably an embarrassing number of years at this point.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at an embarrassing number of years. And my mind is still wrapped around, if I were teaching an advanced GIS class, I'm going to start going to, I want to do some spatial statistics. I want to do some complex processing. And I don't think that those are cases that every customer is going to need in Tableau.
Yeah.
So I want to see how we can use our resources to make it so that when people want to do these edge case things, it's really easy, really seamless.
Oh.
That may be the PhD talking.
Yeah, it sounds good.
And I want it to be easy for everyone, because then I can write blog posts about it and teach everyone how to do this awesome stuff in Tableau.
Sarah, do you have a goal for how many blog posts you're trying to write in a year?
1,000.
1,000, yeah. I knew it was high.
8, maybe?
8. That sounds
I may have put 8 out this morning.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I could take a stab at that question too. In terms of looking forward, again, one of the things I'm really excited about, and I've already mentioned, is the notion of democratizing geospatial analysis and making things just so easy and sort of very familiar in this Tableau user experience, right? So at Tableau, we just care so much about the user interface, the user experience, keeping you in the flow, very like you can reach out and touch your data, it's all about it. And that's one part of it that I want to really make sure that we never lose, right? So when we build in new spatial capabilities, and it could be any of the things that you've said, whether it's sophisticated or more advanced, or it could just be the simplest thing, like I want to control the width of my polygon, or change the color of a particular aspect of the outline.
Yeah, some symbolization.
Cartographic characteristics, right? Like, it's not just about the analysis. There is this visual component that I think we could raise the bar to for, and also make really easy. But I do want to make it really easy.
Yeah.
I do want it to fit within the existing paradigm and not be, not ever be like, well, this is the only path you can take, like as if you had like a wizard or something, right? But in terms of like features and capabilities, I'm really excited about other types of building block pieces, like some of the spatial functions we've already built, because they can be used in concert with all of the other interactive features in Tableau. So I'm not going to reveal all those things, because some of them may be coming soon, or sooner than people know. But I love that we've built these capabilities so that they can work in a very interactive and exploratory manner, and all the things that allow that are the things that I want. I'd also say, getting out of sort of like thinking about it from a feature perspective, I really want to support what I think are these common types of spatial questions around proximity and spatial relationships. Now, there's a lot in that space, right? It could be like topological relationships, but it could just be, relative assessments of things, understanding what's near and what's far, and near and far, well, it depends.
They're kind of fuzzy, yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of fuzzy, right? And making that really easy to work with and evolve that part of the product. So that's obviously a ton of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there are a lot of really good overlaps with other features.
I do think our roadmap probably is a list this long, and we're going to work our way through it. But it is pretty exciting. Sarah, kick it back to you here for a second. What are you looking forward to? We're at the TC conference. We want people to sort of be like involved and engaged here. What are you looking forward to the rest of the week here?
I'm looking forward to talking to as many people as I can.
Yeah.
To me, this is the best week of being able to just walk around, find people, talk to them, find out what their problems are, find out those real pain points. I love talking to all the people that essentially I have quote unquote met on Twitter that I have never actually met. Yeah. And it's like, oh my gosh, you're
from the internet.
Yeah, it's like, you're from the internet. I can't even, I'm blanking on usernames. Hey! And it's just so energetic to talk to people who are excited about maps, who have really interesting problems to solve, who are looking for creative ways to use their data, who are just really open to sharing what they're working on and talking about what's happening in the future and want to geek out on spatial data. I mean, this is not a GIS conference, but almost everybody I talk to is all about let's geek out on data. And it seems like when they're talking one of the two of us, it's let's geek out on our spatial data, and that sends me back to my hotel room making lists. And I've already been making my blog post list of what am I going to be writing next. So the next couple months, I think I got some things to keep me busy.
Yeah.
How about you? What are you looking forward to?
I mean, I use the conference as just like a massive validation for what it is that we are planning to do right now. Because work is happening, right? Like at Tableau right now, engineers are building what's going to be the next wave of things. But I want to make sure that we're helping customers answer the questions that they have and understand sort of broader their mission and what their companies or organizations are trying to do, right? Because sometimes they don't yet know that they might have a question that somebody else already asked, and I can sort of bridge between customers and help people understand and sort of train them a little bit on how to use our product or how to tackle their problem, because I've seen other people do it, right? So I love that information sharing, that knowledge sharing that happens just through conversation, through meetings. But the Tableau conference really is this like checkpoint for all the things that we're doing with the product, but especially with maps and spatial. And I know, just in the time that I've been here, everything that customers are asking about are things that we've already thought about. We haven't been caught off guard yet, which is a really good sign, right? So I feel very confident about what it is we're building, what our mission is, and I know that aligns well with our customers. So it's really great. Sarah, I know we have just another minute here. Why don't we tell people what our Twitter handles are so they can follow and keep this conversation going, right? Sarah, who are you on Twitter?
I am Maps Overlord.
I love when you say it, because it's like your dominion. You're the overlord of this subject,
this is
right?
my space. This is my space, Kent.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And
and how about you?
Yeah, of course I'm Data Kmart, which I don't really know. I think Kmart went out of business, so I kind of lost some of the flashiness of that Twitter handle. But people like it sometimes. So yeah, you can reach out to us on Twitter. Follow this, continue this conversation about maps and spatial. Of course, you're going to find Sarah on the forums as well as myself. But I want to say thank you to the people who tuned in. And Sarah, it's a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, Kent.